I'm Peter Loshak. We are previewing the 2013 NHL playoffs, and right now we are talking with Dave Golikoff, senior sports columnist for AskMen.com, and of course, regular contributor to SBR Forum. Dave, thanks for being back with us.
Good to see you.
All right. We're going to talk right now about the Islanders and Penguins, the other 8-1 matchup. Now, we just talked about Minnesota and Chicago, and this one is a very, very different 8-1 matchup. And we talked about how awesome Chicago was, but how they still were not a very good bet. In fact, they were a bad bet. They were a money-losing bet on the year. The Penguins, not quite as good as Chicago on the ice, but in terms of the money standings, they are phenomenal. They were up 20 units on the year, which is number 3 in this money standings, and this series price too, though, has also gotten bet down from its opening, just like the Minnesota and Chicago series price did. I saw at Pinnacle it opened at Pittsburgh minus 561, and the Islanders plus 469. Now it's gotten bet down 100 points to minus 425 for the Penguins and plus 365 for the Islanders. And the Penguins, of course, we don't know if Sidney Crosby is going to be playing in this game, but as we've seen all year, they're just so loaded with stars that it just doesn't seem to matter with them. What do you think? Penguins minus 425?
No, definitely not. I think that being said, at the end of the day, I think they probably win the series, but I would not lay minus 425 with the Penguins. When you start to look around the NHL landscape and to see if there's any teams like the Los Angeles Kings from last year, teams that were, sort of good, gathered some momentum in the last month of the season and can potentially surprise. Believe it or not, the Isles are one of those teams. I know it's far-fetched. Trust me, I know. It's the Islanders, yada, yada, yada. They've been a doormat for many years. But I would not be surprised if, A, this team went in and won Game 1, or B, really pushed Pittsburgh in this series. Penguins definitely have the edge in talent, definitely have the edge in depth. But the Islanders have been fantastic on the road this season. If you've watched my videos, I've been, taking the Isles on the road all year long. 14-10 on the whole, but that's surprisingly good for an Islanders team that was one of the worst in the NHL overall in the last few years. So they're good there. But you look at their play over the last month. This is a team that really went from outside of the playoffs to inside of the playoffs, and they did lose a couple of their last games and fell to 8th, but they clinched their playoff spot before the Rangers, before the Senators. They've played really good hockey over the last month through all of April, at home, on the road, and I think that they're in that mindset. They're going to be ready to play this game. Pittsburgh has a lot of moving parts. I think at the end of the day, again, as I said before, they win this series, but there's definitely some red flags. I see more red flags with the Pens as a 1 seed laying, in that minus 400 range than I do with the Chicago Blackhawks in that same role.
Yeah, I agree with you. I think that I'm surprised that the Penguins are actually a bigger favorite over the Islanders than the Blackhawks. I mean, the Islanders have an MVP candidate in Tavares. Minnesota doesn't have anyone playing that well, and Nabokov has been a very solid goaltender. And on the other side, the Penguins, we've seen some of these games where like Marc-Andre Fleury, has one of those games where he just completely S's the bed and gives up 3 goals in the first 8 minutes and then gets pulled. Wouldn't be surprised at all if one of these playoff games turns out like that as well.
Yeah, and that's where you start to wonder with Fleury. I mean, listen, the Pens had a very, very surprising exit to the playoffs last year. Lest we forget, they were down 3-0 to Philadelphia before any of us even blinked. And those games were not close. Philadelphia ran them off the ice. The Pens still have the NHL's 25th ranked penalty killing unit, which is surprisingly low for a team that you perceive to be that good. And Marc-Andre Fleury, he's still, I think you put him in that elite category, but he's one of those sort of Roberto Luongo types where in the back of your head, maybe not Roberto Luongo, but in the back of your head, you still wonder with Fleury. The other thing is if the Isles go in and win Game 1, that's going to throw this series upside down, because the reason the Flyers dominated the Pens last year was because of Fleury and because he was so bad in that series. And if the Isles go in there in Game 1 and score 4 or 5 goals against Pittsburgh, again, that might be a stretch, but I'm just saying if. The Pens' confidence is going to be shaken. They're going to get a very rude wake-up call. The media is going to have all these thoughts again. Hey, Fleury in the playoffs. Hey, here we go again. And the Isles they come in with nothing to lose. They've been playing playoff hockey for the last month. and that's why I think they're dangerous. They're all the pressure's on Pittsburgh here.
It's true, and they won't have Crosby. I guess the only issue is just, I mean, Pittsburgh is so loaded. It's almost like a joke fantasy team or something. I mean, they were loaded to begin with, and then they started just trading for other team stars at the end of the year, and now they're just like a superhero hockey team almost. How can you bet against them?
Yeah, and that's why at the end of the day, I think Pittsburgh does advance.
Right.
I think that you might see the Isles, split with the Pens, or at least really push them in either one or both the first two games. But at the end of the day, you look at the series between these teams. The Pens took 4 or 5 meetings this year, and in the 4 wins that Pittsburgh had, they outscored the Isles 16-5. So I think some people say, hey, the Isles finally have a goaltender in Evgeny Nabokov, and solid veteran. He's been here before. That's true, but still, in the 4 losses Pittsburgh scored, or 4 Pittsburgh wins, they scored 16 goals. So that's why at the end of the day, I think Pittsburgh does not flop in this series, but it's the NHL. I'm telling you, anything can happen, and I wouldn't be surprised if the Isles put a real scare into them.
Yeah, so I wouldn't bet the series prices, but maybe if I had to, I might take a shot on the Pens in 5 or 6. I'm not sure what the odds are there, but yeah, narrow it down, not on a sweep and not on a 7-game series.
Well, if you look, some sports books have the over-under for the series, and I think when you look at the money line on this series, Pittsburgh in the 400 range, the over-under for this series should probably be about 4.5 or maybe 5. Right on the number. So I think over might be a good play, because I think the Isles do push the Pens a little bit harder than most people think. And just again, because of that price, because Pittsburgh's favored by so much, you might not see a 5.5, which is sort of the regular line for a series. So it's a bit lower. I do like the over in the series.
Yeah, great point, Dave. Those lines haven't come out yet, but I will be interested to see what the odds are when they do come out. Thanks so much, Dave Golikoff.